2 of our radio program. Nice to have you with us on this Monday. We saved that for Seeger here at 4 because you got Gary D at 5 o'clock on the QBs. Let's spend a couple minutes on some other items as far as the world of sports is concerned. There was nothing definitive about baseball over the weekend that I can pinpoint here. I'll get into some themes to start our second hour, and then we'll get to some hockey and do a couple of things, let you go. Number one, let's do on a terrible note first. What a story, and unbelievable, and hopefully he's going to be okay. How about the White Sox relief pitcher Danny Farquhar? I can't pronounce his last name. I believe that's pronounced properly. Who had the brain aneurysm right after the 6th inning on Saturday night with the White Sox in Houston. He gets a couple of outs, and he's sick in the dugout, and he has, and the trainers, who I guess did a tremendous job, they got him conscious, and then they got him to an ambulance and got him to a hospital, and he had surgery. Sounds like he had a couple. It's really been a little unclear of the specifics because you have not seen. Oh, here's the latest. Okay, he is speaking to doctors and family after undergoing brain surgery. All right, we haven't really heard from a doctor. Ken Williams has talked, the White Sox president, but he basically just said, it's amazing. You never take life for granted. He gave you one of those. He didn't really specifically get into the actual procedures. I know he had the brain surgery. It sounds like it was complicated. He's going to be in ICU for 3 weeks. Listen, Bob Wenzel had, our buddy Bob Wenzel had a brain aneurysm. Peter Gammons had a brain aneurysm. I mean, we know people in sports. I don't know if this is any. It sounds like it was a little more critical. Now, remember, Gammons had it in the either Vineyard or Cape Cod, and they had to be air-vac'd to Massachusetts General. He had it in a car. I don't know how long the surgical scenario for Pete. Now, Peter is, he's been working ever since. I don't know. You'd have to ask him if he's as sharp. It sounds like he's as sharp. I mean, I don't know where he feels he is mentally since, but he still works his rear end off, and he's got everything to say about baseball. It sounds perfect for me, but I don't know Peter well enough, or I don't talk to him about it. But that's, we know that Wenzel, had this a long time ago. We've talked about it. He was sick for 3 weeks. It wasn't as dramatic as far as the actual collapsing, I don't think. Although he didn't feel well for a long time. He had some symptoms. This one was scary as hell with the White Sox reliever. We have not really heard from any doctor at Rush Medical Hospital in Chicago about this. There hasn't been any press conference, no questions being asked. I have heard, all I've heard is the spokesman resting comfortably, critical but stable is essentially what I've heard. And now, speaking to doctors and his family, he's got 3 kids. Terrible story. You saw a picture of him being removed, a quick picture of him being removed from the dugout on Saturday, and it was scary. It was very, very scary. So this is a major traumatic experience for the franchise and for folks in baseball, and of course for him. And let's hope that everything is going to be okay. So that's the first thing we wanted to make sure we get across here right out of the gate. Now, as far as the actual sport is concerned, over the weekend, I didn't think there was anything too dramatic. I'll say 2 things about 2 teams first. One of them is the Dodgers and the other one are the Yankees. The Yankees seem to have settled down a little bit. Over the weekend. They played Toronto outside of Sonny Gray, who's a mess. They played Toronto. They buried the Blue Jays 3 out of 4. They won the last 2 games relatively easily, scored 1 million runs. Brought the kid up they got from the Cubs in the Chapman trade. They played him at, I guess they played him at second base yesterday, right? And they played Andujar at third. Is that what they did? Andujar got 4 hits. Torres didn't get a hit, but, now he's part of that infield for a long time. And the Yankees, Stan hit a home run over the weekend. And the Yankees looked, they got a good performance out of Severino. Yankees looked a little bit more whole and a little bit more settled this weekend than they have really all year since those first 2 games. They looked a little more, looked a little bit more like the Yankees that we thought we would see. And they, obviously had a good weekend against the Blue Jays. So that would be, and they get the Twins this week at home, and they kill the Twins. So you would think the revival of New York would continue. That's the first. Dodgers had a big weekend too. They won a game last Sunday against Arizona, which avoided a sweep and stopped that long Diamondback regular season, quote unquote, winning streak against the Dodgers, which included the first 5 of 2018. Kershaw won last Sunday. Then he went to San Diego. Padres are always fodder for LA. They got swept. Padres did. And then the Dodgers go home, having won 4 in a row, get closer to 500. And, they were 5 under, then they were 4 under and everything else. They were 5 under, and then they went into that National Series at 1 under, so they had won 4 straight. And they lost the first game. Scherzer beat Kershaw, and then they came back and won a second game. Ryu pitched well. And then last night it was a big game for LA. They were down 3-0. Jansen had to get out of the 9th inning jam. He's been bad, as we all know. And the Dodgers won an important game against the Nationals. So I think LA 10-10, back at 500. They got the Marlins coming in for the week, and they'll kill them. Marlins are atrocious. Just got swept in Milwaukee. So I would think that a couple of scenarios were close games there for Miami, but I would think the Dodgers will be in a little better shape now and maybe get on a roll. So that would be point number 2 from a weekend perspective. Point number 3 would be the Nationals, and I think that's a bad series for them. They lost a terrible game to the Mets on that Wednesday at Citi Field. They gave up 9 runs in the bottom of the 8th, and they really did not finish off the sweep. Now, they had won the first game of that series miraculously. They were down 6-1 at DeGrom in the 8th inning. So you could make the argument, if you wished, that both those games kind of evened out. I wouldn't make that argument because they had a chance to get a little comeuppance with the Mets after the Mets had swept them, and they let that last game slip away. And then they went to L.A. They won the first game as Scherzer had Strasburg in Game 2 and a lead in Game 3 and lost both games. So I thought that was a bad series for Washington, who still can't quite get their feet under them. Yes, Rendon. Yes, Murphy. Are out. I get that. And they had somebody out this weekend, too. I forget who it was. Oh, Eaton's out. So they got 3 starters out. But they did have a lead yesterday, which was an important game. They had a lead there last Wednesday against the Mets, and that had an important game, too, and lost both. So I would be concerned by that. The other thing I would consider as far as baseball is concerned is the schedule. And if you noticed with what is going on with some of these teams, you know how the Angels collapsed? Well, the Angels were great early, 13-3. Why? 7 games against Oakland, 3 games in Kansas City, 3 games against Texas. I mean, they played a lot of horrendous teams. They cleaned up, and they won 13 of their first 16. Then they played the Red Sox, and then they played the Giants and lost 5 out of 6. 2 competent, 1 excellent team, 1 competent team with Cueto. Lose 5 out of 6. The Blue Jays have played the Royals, the White Sox, Texas, the Orioles. And what did the Blue Jays do? They walked into Yankee Stadium and got stampeded. Pittsburgh played, Cincinnati, Detroit, a lot of lousy teams for the Pirates. They walk into Philadelphia, and what do? They get swept. So, I mean, to me, a lot of this is schedule. There are so many bad teams in baseball. Think about the 6 horrendous teams. I know Tampa had a good weekend, but they're an horrendous team. Miami is an horrendous team. The White Sox, I took them as an over, 4-14, an horrendous team. The Orioles, I took them as an over, awful, 6-16, an horrendous team. Kansas City stinks. I mean, there are a lot of bad baseball. I mean, that's Kansas City, the White Sox, the Orioles, the Marlins, Tampa, and the Reds, who have lost 17 of 20. I mean, you can't come up with if you play those teams early in the year, you're in good shape. And that's why I take the Phillies record for granted. They've had 3 games against the Reds, they swept. They had 3 games against Tampa, they swept. And they had a 3-game series against Miami, they won 2 out of 3. So they won 8-1 against those 3 teams. Meanwhile, they played 2 at Citi Field, lost both. And they played 6 games against Atlanta and lost 4-6. So that's why I don't take the Phillies that seriously. But if you get off to a good start, a lot of it might be the product of who you are playing. And I think that is the case in certain degrees with the 3 teams I mentioned. So I wanted to get that on the board here and get you going there as far as baseball is concerned. Ohtani will pitch tomorrow night in Houston against the Astros, who are flying right now for the Angels. The Yankees will go to Anaheim this weekend, so you keep an eye on that. We look forward to seeing that. Harvey's in the bullpen for the Mets. You know that. which he deserves to be. Arenado, somehow he missed Little League practice the day that said don't make the last out of the game at the plate. Arenado at 9-7. And this is where you got to wonder what these players are thinking about. You see what happened yesterday in that Rocky Cub game? It's bases loaded, 2 out in the bottom of the ninth, 9-7 Cubs. And Morrow, the guy they got from L.A., throws a wild pitch. He tries to score out at the plate. Now, what are you doing, son? What are you doing? I mean, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. A base hit ties the game anyway. There's 2 out. I mean, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Now, they reviewed it, and on the review, they caught him safe. They reviewed him, caught him out. What are you doing? That is so, I mean, that is unbelievably asinine. Some of these players, sometimes, you really wonder what's going on. And also, Dave Martinez. You wonder about Martinez. Here's one for you. 2 out. No, I'm sorry. 2 on. Nobody out. Top of the ninth yesterday, 4-3 LA. All right, first 2 guys get hits. Bottom of the order. He does not bunt on the first pitch. Kid takes a strike. He may have swung. Lefty hitter, he can't hit. Defoe, whatever his name is, takes a strike. Then he tries to bunt the second pitch and fouls it off. Next pitch, strike 3. Either bunt or hit. Don't hedge it. And the idea there is to bunt. Get the tying run to third base. Anyway, bring that up. I will have fun with Steve on this items a little bit later on. The hockey this weekend, the NHL is going to have a couple quiet days here if they don't get some Game 7s. They have 2 Game 6s tonight. Both teams that trail in the Game 6s are at home, which would make you think one of them would win. So they'd have 1 Game 7 in the first round on Wednesday, which is light for the NHL opening round, not to get a 7th game. They have the Leafs tonight against the Bruins. Excuse me. One more sneeze. They're up 3-2 Boston, and then Game 6 tonight in Columbus with the Capitals, and that was a great game the other day. I couldn't find it for some reason. You can't find these games where I live. I had the Devil-Tampa game on. Somehow they must feel that Connecticut wants to see the Devils play. So I didn't get the Columbus-Washington game. I couldn't find it. I guess it was on CNBC. Anyway, make a long story short, the Capitals, who should have been put to bed in Game 3 of this series, they let Hopi start Game 3. He got himself together. They won in double overtime. They blew the Columbus team out in Game 4 to get even at 2 games apiece. This is a Capital team that is snake bit and never gets out of the first 2 rounds. Maybe this is what they needed. And then they go out there in Game 5. They get outshot 16-1 in the third period there in Game 5. Somehow get out of the period, still tied, and then win a game in overtime. And then they go Game 6 tonight in Columbus. That's a hell of a job by the Caps. So we'll see what Columbus is made of. Tortorella did say, guaranteed we'll see you Wednesday for Game 7. We'll have to wait and see on that. Nashville did what they had to do to beat Colorado. You know that. The NHL Western Conference playoffs should be 2 good series if you're wrapped up on Jets Predators. That series will not begin. No, both those series will not begin until Thursday night. Winnipeg at Nashville, and then the San Jose series with the Ducks. With the Sharks, and these other series in the East. I'm assuming we begin Friday night. Pittsburgh and Nashville, after stumbles, showed you what they're made of in Game 6s on the road. Pittsburgh, third period domination, and obviously Nashville and Colorado against the Lanch. So there you go. Should have excellent second round series. Boston, Toronto, winner, Tampa. Pittsburgh against maybe the Capitals. Winnipeg, Nashville will be a hell of a series. And then, of course, San Jose and if you care about it, San Jose and Vegas, the hockey. And I did like Andre the Giant. It was good. It's funny. I was young enough, perfect age. I just never, ever got into it. I never did. Mid 70s. I remember, those districts that had all the, the wrestling foundations in certain districts, Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, and all that nonsense. I remember some of those WrestleMania things, Hulk Hogan. Never, ever did I get into it. And yet somehow, in the last 5 months, I've watched 2, Ric Flair and Andre the Giant. Both were very good. Flair is alive. So
Flair's better because you can talk to him.
Yeah, he's alive.
You get him first-hand accounts.
So I'd have to say that was a little more interesting. Interesting life, Flair. Had a more interesting life. And Andre the Giant from Paris, and he had that disease, and the poor guy just never, he found his niche in wrestling. It didn't last long, but he found his ritual. But I was fascinated. But both were good. Both were very good. So I saw that, and I did see the end of Breaking Bad. I saw that 2 Saturdays ago. I saw the last 2 episodes, and I love it. Better than it's better. It might be better than The Sopranos. Better ending, no question about it. But it might be better than The Sopranos. You've seen these mafia movies and shows forever. This was really something out in left field. Vince Gilligan. 18 after the hour, we continue. Mad Dog Unleashed.
Lock it in.